brutally honest with myself about some of the relationships and situations I was in my 20s, the cult being one. I was the victim there. And I knew that, and I didn't understand it. And was there a part of me that was like, I'm so good, I'm trying to help you, I'm trying to make sure that light shines and no one gets hurt, and this is what I do. So I needed to be needed in that situation. As I've evolved with my practice, with my clients, and with my growth, I realized my own toxicity in that situation. Now, that doesn't mean that all things that happened there were good or that I brought it on myself, not at all. So anybody that's ever been in a situation like that, please don't misunderstand me here. What I learned about that situation as I processed it on further is that there was a part of me that fed into the cycle of what was going on there. And I think in many ways, many of us are complicit in things that happen in our life. We don't ask for things to happen, but we do give our agreement. We do give our permission. You know, we're taught in the psychoanalysis world that we allow things and we teach people how to treat us. So there was a lot that I was learning, and we'll go a little bit further back to understand why I could even end up in a situation like that, or other relationships that were not healthy. But that interesting perspective from Teal Swan and also Dr. Christiane Northrup really began to open my eyes. I realized that perhaps there are some kernels of truth in both of these ideas. Now, this concept is widely discussed in metaphysical circles. It is a common known fact, as common as it is known that you need baking powder to make a cake rise, or that apples are the main ingredient in apple pie. But empaths, psychics, and intuitives don't advertise it because, again, like I said, it is a great embarrassment, because until you really understand the inside and the outside of why these experiences are happening, you think, what am I doing to make this happen to me? But I fear that we neglect in our efforts to kind of put on capes and save the world to make clear the journey and the struggle of doing your work, of doing this work, of being intuitive, of working with clients, of walking into an office. If you don't have a client in sight and you're picking up on the energy of what's going on in an office, you're an empath if you're picking up on that. Now, we all may be in tune with the mood swings of our coworkers or our family members or our lovers or spouses, but there's something deeper that goes on with empaths and intuitives, and we're going to get into that today. So let's talk about this for a bit, the cape, the journey, and the fact that it's always not as pleasant as it really is made out to be, or as glamorous as it might be made out to be. Here's what you need to know. Most empaths cut their teeth in their youth or in their past lifetimes. They're usually dealing with some form of trauma, and they are taught not to indulge in the idea of boundaries. Now, this is really the first step in making an empath. It's not a fun step. It's stripping away everything that's protective and comforting, and it usually happens in youth. And I've talked to numerous practitioners in the metaphysical community that have had these experiences with narcissists and things later, and the one common denominator is I was taught not to have boundaries. I was taught not to speak up for myself, whether you're a male or a female. I've heard it time and time again. It's documented. It's talked about at various symposiums with various doctors and things like that are working in this community. So this is a known thing, but I don't think that everyone outside of the community really understands that. So they're really good with not minding their boundaries. And this makes empaths particularly good at pushing aside their feelings, which is what ends up making them so brilliant at understanding your feelings. So they're pushing aside their feelings and honoring the feelings of others. That is step one. Now, it's not a healthy step. It's not healthy at all. But what it does is it trickles into some of the situations and experiences that we find ourselves in at later dates in life. Like all people, we have the ability to utilize our powers for good or bad. This is a misnomer, too. People, and sometimes some empaths I've run into, and sometimes myself, have thought, oh, I only spread light, I'm only sprinkling unicorn dust and fairy love. No, I'm human. And so that is not so. And I've been doing a lot of work with integrating my shadow self and my empathic light self to be a better healer, because I think only in that truth are you better, and we'll get into that some more. But I wanted to really get that out there, that we can use our powers for good or bad, just like anybody else. There is duality in all human beings. I noticed that I made a concerted shift towards good in my 20s. That is not to say that I was bad previously, but that, again, like I mentioned, I indulged in the victim side of the hero's journey. Not understanding my power in full, I often thought this, pity thoughts. Why me? Why am I in this cult? Or why am I in this position? Why don't they like me? Can't they see how good I am? I could feel the energy of the people around me, and I couldn't understand why I couldn't shift that energy. I wasn't owning my power. When I found myself in a job in corporate America with an extremely narcissistic sociopath who called her workers her minions, so she very much understood her power. She called her workers her minions and told me that women don't ask for raises. They just come in and wash windows and be the first to turn on the lights, and the money will eventually find them. Now, that's a real thing, guys, and that's a story for a different day. She was crazy. We'll talk about toxic workplaces. I've had some requests, actually, to talk about that. So we will have a show about toxic workplaces and what to do to survive them and what to do to identify them. But I worked for this incredibly manipulative person, again, as an empath. I'm thinking, well, why am I here in this situation again? Fantastic learning experience with that person. She, besides just being crazy, taught me so much about the nuances of a sociopath and how they operate and what to watch for in the manipulation. But I found myself in a position like that after the call, and this is recently. This isn't 1950 that she's saying women shouldn't ask for raises. A woman saying to me that we shouldn't ask for raises. So I realized in that time that I had really kind of immersed myself there, and I wanted to understand why. And so when I was dealing with that situation, I realized that it's not just about someone being dark, it's not just about someone being insane, but it was about me not owning what I was feeling. I was very much in my weep womp mode, my why me mode, and then I began to realize my power. I began to shift into just trying to navigate my way in the world and realizing my effect on the world around me. That's something I'm still coming to terms with. But I really started to shift and realize, you affect people's energy as well. So you're not a victim here. You're an active participant. Now, what are you going to do with what you have, the way that you affect people? How do you want to utilize that? So I really paid a lot of attention so that I could kind of pull out of that victim mentality, and I really began to shift. And this is the way that you kind of know if you're sort of running into folks that are sucking the energy out of you. You have to kind of pull back so that you can know what your feelings are. And that was something that I really had to do. I had to get in touch with my feelings. I had to understand what felt right to me. Some of my greatest lessons really have come from the most sociopathic people who I've invested great swaths of time in trying to save. Empaths, hear me here. Who are you trying to save? Now listen, I promise you, if you're doing this work, you're trying to save somebody. You spend a lot of time, and I did too, trying to save someone. I'm really circumspect with who I invest my time with these days. There are, I call them cold cases. That's what I call them. Past relationships that I've had with people that knew me in a different incarnation and may never respect what I'm doing now or understand what I'm doing now. And I see that there's work to be done, and sometimes I shun it. Sometimes I'm like, I don't want to waste my time because I've already spent time with a narcissist or a sociopath, and I know that I may not be making the impact that I think I'm making, and that's ego, so I have to pull back. So there are some times where, and there's a case right now where I'm really investigating in my spirit, how much time do I want to invest? Is this going to make any difference? But you have to do that now. And now I don't apologize for it. I know what I mean. And I know why I say the things I do. I know the background and the history of situations with people. And I also know what I'm intuiting when I'm meeting new people and new clients to do that with. So I want to ask you, who are you spending your time with? Okay? Now, I know that I've been doing this my whole life, but what those situations were actually teaching me was an amazing free education in the nuances in dark and light. And not just other people's dark and light, but my own dark and light side. Again, big, big deal. I so notice in our community that intuitives don't want to own that darkness. It's like all love and light and love and light blessings and love and light bombs, and that's such BS to me because there is darkness, and I'm not saying that like you have to embrace it, but I guess I am saying you have to embrace it. You have to understand that you don't always feel good, that you can't always give. You have to understand that you do want to say no. You have to understand that you may not like the energy that someone's bringing to you, and you're responsible for how you internalize that. I used to internalize it all and make it about me, and now sometimes I realize that's their stuff. I have a friend that says, not my circus, not my monkeys, okay? And sometimes I've had to employ that in order to survive and understand that I am not here to take on everybody's crap. And also to know that sometimes I have crap of my own. And that is what I want you to come away with today, to understand that anybody that's doing this work, or if you feel called to do this work, it's okay to not be okay. That's something it took me a while to figure out. And so if I can circumvent the time frame that it takes you to figure it out, then full speed ahead. I really wish that for you so that you don't waste any time thinking that you have to be perfect and happy and available. You don't have to always be available. Big deal there, guys. So now, as we go on, I learned a couple things about myself. When I say darkness and light and my own darkness and light, I learned how I could lash out. I learned that I did lash out. For a long time, I deluded myself, and I thought I was a paragon of perfect friendship. Not true. I did lash out because energy has to go somewhere, and it will bubble up to the surface in little insidious ways if you're not properly meditating, talking things out with trusted confidants and friends, and working out emotions. You will have a fishery, a little exposure, a little explosion of toxicity that will surprise you. And so empaths, I encourage you to take charge of yourself, get in charge of that and get in control of that dark side and integrate your shadow side, is what we call it, your shadow side with your light side, so that you can be better and more efficient at your job. But there were moments when I definitely realized that I could lash out. I could be passive-aggressive. That was how I was aggressive. I wasn't aggressive-aggressive. I was passive-aggressive. And I learned how to reiterate and retreat, really, from confrontation. I learned how to retreat from confrontation because I wasn't sure it was okay to have a strong feeling or strong feelings of anger. I was very uncomfortable with me having strong feelings of anger unless it was in the form of depression or inwardly turned. Another thing that empaths often suffer with is depression because they don't know how to process the energy and they don't want to be mean to anybody else because, God forbid, we're ever angry with anybody else, so we turn it in on ourselves. So that's another thing to watch out for, guys, with yourself. Be kind to yourself. So I didn't know that it was okay to be angry. And I didn't understand boundaries. So these experiences with these sociopaths and these narcissists helped me to understand boundaries, and how I understood what they were is in the contrast. We've talked about that before here on Evolve. Contrast lets you know what you don't like. When something doesn't feel good, you then learn what you do like. And so the relationships that I had with these people that were sucking the life out of me and were so attracted to me, and I was very attracted to them, is because I was allowed to experience contrast, to know, oh, this is what it feels like not to have any boundaries at all, or maybe I can work from here and figure out what boundaries are. I'm also going to touch back before the show's over about why you're attracted to narcissists and sociopaths. So we'll talk about that in a minute, but that seems strange to say. Why would you be attracted to a sociopath? There's very good reasons, fantastic reasons why you would be. So we'll talk about that. But what I learned in that is how to have strength, and I learned what boundaries were. And this is something that all healers go through, or all that I've spoken with has gone through, is this relationship with a narcissist or sociopath in their life where they're trying to figure out, what am I doing wrong here? I think I'm supposed to uplift the world or be here to help my fellow